Helen sat on her porch staring at the sunset, but instead of feeling peace, a heavy thought settled in her chest. Why don't I feel happy? She had lived a full life, raised a family, and done everything right, yet something felt off. It wasn't her health, her finances, or even her circumstances. It was the quiet voice in her mind, whispering old beliefs that made her feel stuck, unfulfilled, and invisible. But here's the truth. Happiness in old age isn't about luck, it's about what you choose to believe. Today, we're uncovering 9 toxic beliefs that hold women back, starting with one that keeps too many of us trapped. 1. I'm too old to change. Helen used to tell herself that change was for younger people. She wasn't one to reinvent herself at this stage of life. Why start now? The thought of trying something new, whether it was a different routine, a new hobby, or even changing her mindset, felt exhausting. It was easier to stick to what she knew. Then one day, she ran into an old friend, Margaret, at the grocery store. But Margaret looked different, not in a superficial way, but in a radiant, glowing, joyful way. Helen had to ask, "What's your secret?" Margaret laughed. "I stopped telling myself I was too old to change. I sold my house, moved to a smaller place by the beach, and finally started painting again. I feel alive." That conversation shook Helen. Margaret was the same age as her, yet she had thrown out the idea that life had to stay the same, and that was the moment Helen realized. It's not age that keeps people stuck, it's their beliefs about age. She started small. Instead of saying "I can't do that," she began saying, "I'll try." She rearranged her furniture to make her space feel fresh. She signed up for an online class just to see if she liked it. And within weeks, something incredible happened. She felt lighter, more energized, more engaged in life. The truth, change isn't reserved for the young. The minute you decide you're not too old to grow, life starts opening up in ways you never imagined. 2. Happiness depends on other people. For most of her life, Helen thought happiness came from being with the right people. A loving partner, children who visited often, and friends who invited her to things. But as she got older, social circles shifted. Her children were busy with their own lives, friends moved away. Some days the phone barely rang. And that's when the belief crept in. Maybe I'm just not as important anymore. Maybe happiness isn't possible without the right people around me. Then, one afternoon, she decided to do something radical. She took herself out to lunch, alone. At first she felt self-conscious. Would people think I was lonely? But as she enjoyed her meal, something surprising happened. She noticed other women sitting alone, some reading, some writing in journals, some simply enjoying the world around them. And it clicked. Happiness doesn't come from waiting for others to show up. It comes from showing up for yourself. She started embracing solo activities, going to museums, taking walks, and trying new coffee shops. She began finding joy in her own company, and something magical happened. The more she enjoyed life on her own, the more people naturally gravitated toward her. Yes, relationships matter, but true happiness starts within. The moment you realize you don't have to wait for someone else to bring joy into your life, you take your power back. 3. It's selfish to put myself first. Helen spent decades caring for others. She had been a daughter, a wife, a mother, a grandmother. Taking care of people was what she did. But somewhere along the way, she started believing that her needs didn't matter as much. She canceled plans if someone needed her. She gave up hobbies when family obligations got in the way. She never wanted to seem selfish. But one day, at a family gathering, she watched her daughter Emily set boundaries effortlessly. Emily declined an invitation to a party because she wanted a quiet night to herself. She spoke openly about what she needed, without guilt. Helen pulled her aside. "How do you do that? How do you say no without feeling bad?" Emily smiled. "Because I know that taking care of myself isn't selfish. It's how I stay happy, so I have more to give." That was the moment Helen realized she had been pouring from an empty cup for too long. So she did something she hadn't done in years. She said no to something she didn't want to do. And guess what? The world didn't end. No one got mad. If anything, she felt lighter. Then she started adding little moments of self-care into her life. Reading before bed, taking a class, and enjoying a long bath without guilt. And slowly she began to understand, putting yourself first doesn't take away from others. It allows you to show up as your best self. Because here's the truth, a happy woman creates a happy life for herself and everyone around her. 4. My best years are behind me. Helen used to catch herself saying, well, those were the good old days. She'd reminisce about the past, the adventures, the excitement, the deep belly laughs, and feel a twinge of sadness. Somewhere along the way, she had absorbed the idea that life peaks at a certain point, and everything afterward is just coasting downhill. But one afternoon, while scrolling online, she stumbled upon a story that shattered that belief. An 82-year-old woman who started a travel blog and was now exploring the world solo. Helen stared at the screen, thinking, if she can do that at 82, what's stopping me? And that was her wake-up call. The best years aren't behind you unless you decide they are. She realized that great moments don't expire, they evolve. The adventures may look different now, but that doesn't make them any less exciting. She decided to stop waiting for life to happen and started planning things to look forward to. A weekend getaway, a new class, a project she'd been putting off. And the more she did this, the more she realized, happiness doesn't belong to the past. It's something you create in the present. So if you ever catch yourself thinking the best is over, challenge that belief. Start a new passion project, plan an experience, shake things up. The best years are the ones you choose to make great. 5. I shouldn't make a fuss. Helen had always been the easygoing one. She didn't like conflict, didn't like making waves, didn't like being difficult. If a restaurant got her order wrong, it's fine. If someone interrupted her in conversation, no big deal. If a friend let her down, let it go. But the problem was, all those little things started adding up. Over time, she realized she wasn't just letting things slide, she was letting herself disappear. One day, she was at a store, and the cashier accidentally charged her twice for an item. She almost let it go, but then a thought hit her. If I don't speak up for myself, who will? So she politely pointed it out, and the cashier quickly fixed the mistake. It was a small thing, but walking out of that store, she felt powerful. And that's when she realized, speaking up isn't about being rude or difficult, it's about valuing yourself. From that moment on, Helen started setting boundaries. She said no when she didn't want to do something. She voiced her opinions, even when they were different. She stopped apologizing for taking up space. And guess what? The world didn't fall apart. In fact, people respected her more. So if you've ever felt like you need to shrink yourself to keep the peace, remember this: your voice, your preferences, your feelings, they matter. Speak up, take up space. You are worth it. Aging means becoming invisible. Helen had noticed something over the years. When she was younger, people paid attention, doors were held open, compliments were given, conversations included her. But as she got older, it felt like the world started looking through her, instead of at her. One evening, she was out with a younger friend at a restaurant. The waiter smiled at her friend, took her order with enthusiasm, and barely made eye contact with Helen. And for the first time, she felt truly invisible. That moment stung, but then, a rebellious thought crept in. Who decided I have to fade away? Helen made a decision right then. She wasn't going to let society decide her worth, so she started showing up boldly. She wore clothes she loved, not just what was age-appropriate. She spoke confidently in conversations. Instead of waiting for a turn, she stopped making herself smaller. And something interesting happened. People responded. The truth is, visibility is a mindset. The more you carry yourself like you belong, the more the world reflects that back to you. So if you ever feel overlooked, step up, step out, and make yourself seen, because you are still here, and you still matter. 7. It's too late to follow my dreams. Helen had always loved writing. As a young girl, she'd fill notebooks with stories, poems, and thoughts about the world. But as life happened, marriage, children, work, her writing was quietly pushed to the side. Eventually, the dream of being a writer became just that, a dream. One evening, She was watching an interview with a woman who published her first novel at 76. Helen leaned forward, intrigued. The woman laughed and said, "The only deadline for your dreams is the one you create." That line stuck with Helen. What if it's not too late? The next morning, she picked up a pen and started writing just for herself. A short reflection, a funny memory, a thought about the world. It felt awkward at first, like stretching a muscle that hadn't been used in years. But with each word, something inside her reignited. She didn't need to be a best-selling author, she just needed to do what made her feel alive. And that's the secret. Dreams don't expire, you just have to give yourself permission to start. Whether it's writing, painting, learning an instrument, or traveling to a place you've always wanted to go, the only too late is the one you believe in. So ask yourself, what's one thing I always wanted to do but told myself it was too late? Now, go do it. Even if it's just a tiny step, because happiness isn't about age, it's about allowing yourself to keep growing. 8. I have to fit into what society expects of older women. Helen had always been a rule follower. She dressed appropriately, spoke politely, and never made a scene. Society had clear expectations for older women. Be modest, be quiet, don't try too hard to stand out. But one afternoon she was out shopping when she saw a woman, probably in her late 70s, wearing a bright red leather jacket, chunky bracelets, and the boldest red lipstick Helen had ever seen. The woman was laughing loudly. She looked fearless, and Helen thought, I want to be like her. That was the moment she realized she had been playing by someone else's rules. She started asking herself, do I actually like the way I dress? Do I say what I really think? Do I let myself be fully seen? So she made a decision. She bought a dress she loved, but once thought was too much for her age. She stopped hiding her opinions in conversations. She let herself be expressive, playful, bold. And here's what she learned. There's no rule book for aging. The idea that women should fade into the background after a certain age, a lie. You get to define what aging looks like for you. Want to dye your hair pink? Go for it. Want to take a dance class? Sign up. Want to wear something that makes you feel stunning? Wear it. Because the happiest women aren't the ones who follow the rules. They're the ones who live exactly as they please. 9. I don't have control over my happiness. Helen used to think happiness was something that just happened. Some people had it, some people didn't. She often found herself saying, I'll be happy when the weather was nicer, when her family visited more, when life felt easier. But then she met Mary, a woman in her 80s, who radiated pure joy. Helen expected her to have a perfect life, but as they talked, she was shocked. Mary had lost her husband, battled illness, and had plenty of challenges, yet Mary smiled and said, happiness isn't about what happens to you, it's about what you focus on. That hit Helen like a bolt of lightning. Had she been waiting for happiness instead of creating it? That night she decided to test it out. She made a list of small things that brought her joy: morning sunlight on her porch, the smell of fresh coffee, a book that made her laugh. Simple things, and the next morning, she looked for them. Something changed. She started noticing joy everywhere. Not because life was suddenly perfect, but because she chose to see it, and that's the truth. Happiness isn't about waiting for perfect conditions, it's about choosing to find beauty in the life you have now. So what small moment of happiness can you notice today? Because the more you look for joy, the more it finds you. Who knew a few mindset shifts could be the secret sauce to happiness? Turns out, life after 70 isn't about fading into the background, it's about stepping up, owning your joy, and rewriting the rules. So tell me, which belief are you ditching first? Drop a comment, I'm all ears.